Good morning, Year 5s, and welcome to your maths lesson. I hope that you've had a really good day of learning so far. For those of you who have handed in your work, well done. Just a reminder that we do expect you to be sending your work in every single day, and if you do not, we will be chasing you up with a phone call to your parents to find out why you have not been accessing your learning. So please make sure that you do the work today and that you give it a go. Right, so we're going to be looking at our learning objective today, which is to add fractions. And I think you're going to whiz through this if you listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. But before we get going with that, can you please do your starter, your fast five now? Here are your questions. So pause the video now and have a go. Great, let's quickly mark this and then we can move on. So nice and easy mental calculation. 6 times 5 is 30. And then I count the zeros. There are 2 zeros. So I put 2 zeros in my answer. Nice and simple. 3,000. Number 2, I've got 2 decimal numbers that I'm adding together. So the most important thing I need to remember is that I'm going to line up that decimal point. Okay, and then I put in the numbers exactly how they appear, and there's a gap here, so I can put my placeholder. I'm adding these 2 numbers, so 5, 8, bring down that very important decimal so they all line up. So all my decimal points are lining up. 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 plus 3 is 10. Carry the 1, and 6 plus 1 is 7. 707.85. Right, next one. Round this number to the nearest 2 decimal places. So it's very important that I go find the number, underline the number next door. Right, 2 is less than 5, so my number is going to stay the same. So 3 is not going to round up. Everything to the left, including the decimal, stays exactly the same. And that is my answer because I'm only wanting 2 decimal places after the decimal point. Right, here is your equivalent fractions. And I was really, really proud with those children who managed to crack this yesterday. And I just want to say I'm really, really, really proud of those children who are persevering. There have been a number of children, and you know exactly who you are, who have not given up on this, even though they have found it a little bit challenging, and they have worked through it. They've sat down, they've gone through the videos again, they've gone through those steps to success, and they have been so incredibly proud with themselves because yesterday, when they did their work, they did super, super well. So they can be incredibly proud of themselves. And it's a life lesson, really, that sometimes things is difficult. Sometimes it is hard and we need to work through it. So I really want to commend and say that I'm incredibly, incredibly proud of the child and the children that have been working very hard to persevere and push through their difficult, tricky sums with math. So well done. Right, so when we're looking at equivalent fractions, remember they are equal. So I'm saying I'm going to be making the same amount. Okay, I'm not actually changing the amount that the shape is taking up. I'm just making an equivalent fraction. So I'm going to be looking at my missing value and I put my arrows pointing to it. I then find the numbers that have the most information, which is this top number here. And I say, what did I do to 3 to get 9? And I said times 3. Then I pause and I check. This is a very important step because if we don't pause and check, we often make a silly mistake in this step. And then that means all our working out going forward is incorrect. So 3 times 3 is 9. So I'm happy with that. So whatever I do to the one number, I need to do to the other number. And 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, so your answer would have been 9/12. And the last one, which is greater? Now, this is quite an important one to listen to because I've marked and given feedback to all those children who handed back their maths to me by 6 o'clock this evening. Well, yesterday evening, 6 o'clock now that I'm doing this video. But this is very important that you are following these steps. So first of all, I look at the numbers and I cannot compare the numbers because they all have different bottom numbers. My denominators need to be the same in order for me to be able to compare them. Now I need to decide what number can all 3 of these numbers be divided into. So if it's going to help you, write the multiples of 3, write the multiples of 6, write the multiples of 8. Okay, so if I say 8, 16, 24, 32, and I'd only write the first 3 or 4, okay? You can always carry on, But if you had to carry on counting in 8, you will be here until next year. Right, then count in 6, 12, 18, 24, and 3, 6, 9, 12. Right, now I can notice that none of them have a common multiple yet. So I'm going to carry on. So I'm going to say 15, 18, 21, 24. And I started with the 3 because it's the smallest number. So I'm going to carry on with that smallest number. And there you will see that the number 8 has a multiple of 24. There is 6 has a multiple of 24 and 3 has a multiple of 24. So my number at the bottom is going to be 24. Okay, so that is important that you follow those steps if you're looking for the common factor for all of these. I mean, the common multiple, sorry, not the common factor. Right, now I need to go and make equivalent fractions with all of these. So I'm going to say 2 8 is equal to what? Now I know that my bottom number is going to be 24 because I know that all 3 of those denominators can go into 24. Now I say, what did I do to 8 to get 24? I times it by 3. So whatever I do to the one number, I need to do to the other number. So I'm going to say 2 times 3 is 6. Then I'm going to say, what I do to 6 to get 24? I times it by 4. So what must I do to the 4? I need to times it by 4, and that is going to be 16. And what did I do to 3 to get 24? I times it by 8. So what must I do to the 1? I need to times it by 8, and that is going to be 8. And now I can look at the top numbers, and I can look at, the question is asking what fraction is greater, so which is the biggest fraction there. And the biggest one is obviously 16 24s because 6, 16, 8. The biggest number is 16. And remember, I must write the original fraction. So the original fraction was 4, 6. Okay, that is very important, and it's an important step that many of you did not follow yesterday because many of you got them incorrect. Now, going on from yesterday, I want to have a look at some of the questions that people did not answer correctly, and just so that we can make sure that we're not going to make these silly mistakes today. So as I said, the first one was ordering fractions, okay? So we're going to be looking at order these fractions from smallest to largest. Now, my first step for every single one of these is going to be, are my denominators the same? If they are not the same, I need to make them the same. So I'm going to look at these numbers and say, right, my denominators are not the same. I have a 5, I have a 5, I have a 2, and I have a 10. I then always go to the biggest numbers first. Okay, so step 1, are my denominators the same? No. If they are not the same, then I cannot do anything further. I have to change them all to get the same denominator. Then I look at the biggest denominator that they give me, which is 10, and I see if all the other numbers at the bottom can go into that number. So can 5 go into 10 and can 2 go into 10? Yes, they can. So I'm going to make my bottom number tenths. Right. Now that I have that, I then need to make equivalent fractions. And those steps to success for equivalent fractions are in the File tab in your Maths. If you click on Maths and you go at the top of the page, you'll see a little tab that says Files. And if you select that, you'll see Week 6. And if you select that, you will find the equivalent fraction step to success. So how do we make an equivalent fraction? So 2/5, I'm going to say, right, what I do to the 5 to get 10? I times it by 2. So I need to, whatever I do to the bottom number, I must do to the top number. So I'm going to say 2 times 2 is 4. Then I'm going to say what I do to 5 to get 10. I said times it by 2. So whatever I do to the one number, I need to do to the top number. So 3 times 2 is 6. Then what I do to 2 to get 10, I times it by 5. So I must times 1 by 5, which is 5. And what I do to 10 to get 10, I did nothing. In fact, I just multiplied it by 1. So I'm going to say 3 times 1 is 3. Now I can look at my numbers and I can compare them and order them because my bottom numbers are the same. So I'm wanting to go from largest to smallest. And again, many of you did not read your questions and you are not going to get the answers if you're going to be lazy and not read your questions. So I want to find the biggest number first. So what is the biggest number? 6/10. Right. Now, I'm not going to write 6/10 because I want to write the original fraction. Okay, remember I spoke to you about the fact that I've given you these 4 cards and I say, which card would you give back to me? Now you've worked out that this is the equivalent fraction. So the original fraction of 6/10 is 3/5. So 3/5 is going to go first. Right, so I've done that one. Then, which is the next one, right? 5/10. Again, what is the original fraction? It is going to be a half. So I've done that one. Then the next one is 4/10, and the original fraction is 2/5. And the last but not least, 3/10. You cannot just look at the top numbers and say, oh, well, this is 3/5 and this is 3/10. So 3/10 must look bigger because it's got 3 at the top and it's got 10 at the bottom. So it's the biggest number. That is not correct. Okay. In fact, in this case, it is the smallest number here on the scale. So please make sure that you are doing these steps. You need to write the fractions out. You need to make the equivalent fractions underneath. Then you can compare the top numbers and you can then order them underneath with the original fractions. Okay. Right, question number 2, which fraction is the smallest? Again, right, it is important that I read my information. I want the smallest fraction. So again, I'm going to say I have a half. I'm just going to write it out so we can just see how we should be setting out our work when we are doing it on a piece of paper. Right, I have a half, I have 3/8, and I have 3/4. Right, first step. Step number 1, can you remember what that is? Good. Denominators need to be the same. So, are they the same? No. Can you remember what step number 2 is? Good. Look at the biggest number and see if the other numbers can go into that number. So, can 4 go into 8? Yes. Can 2 go into 8? Yes. Right, so what do you think my bottom number is going to be? Very good. It is going to be 8. So I'm going to make 8s. Right, can you remember what the next step is? Fantastic stuff. I'm going to now make equivalent fractions. I can't just put the 3 here because I've changed this 4 to an 8. So I've got to say, what do I do to the 4 to get 8? I times it by 2. So whatever I do to the one number, I must do to the other number. So 4 times 2 is 8. So 3 times 2 is 6. And I said this yesterday, I said, if it's easier, and this is going to help you, because we normally set it out like that when making equivalent fractions, all right, then you can do that. It's exactly the same. You can do this on the side of your piece of paper, and then you take that 6 and you write it at the top. Right, so what I did to 8 to get 8, I did nothing, so I'm going to do nothing to 3. And what I do to 2 to get 8, I times it by 4. So what am I going to do to the 1? I'm going to times it by 4. And now I can compare these fractions because I can look at the top numbers and I can go, right, I want the smallest fraction, okay? And the smallest fraction is obviously the number at the top is the smallest, which is this one over here. So it is going to be 3/8. Nice and simple. Many of you wrote 3/4 for some reason, okay? It's very important that you are looking and working out the numbers. Right, then these last 2 questions was just pure reading, all right? It says 3 friends ordered pizza, and it then said who ate the most, not what fraction ate the most. If I had to highlight keywords here, who is referring to a person. Who stole Miss Fink's pencil off her desk, or who went outside to collect their lunch. You would give me a name back. You wouldn't give me a fraction. You wouldn't say 3/8, okay? So you must be reading the questions very carefully. You can see here that this person answered the question with the fraction. Who ate the most pizza? 15/18. Is that possible? I don't think so. So you need to read your questions carefully. It doesn't ask me how much pizza that person ate. It asks who ate the most pizza. And as well, it says on which day, All right, I don't want to know what the fraction is. I want to know the day as to which he read the least amount of pages. Okay, I got all lovely funny answers here of fractions, but you need to answer the question. So lots of you could tell me that 15/18 was the correct fraction, but the question asks me who. So I'm not going to give you the mark for that because that is not answering my question. Okay, so these were just very silly mistakes that I saw from your questions today. So let's whiz through the next bit, making sure that we're really paying attention, and then you can do your activity on Teams. So we're going to be adding fractions today. And just like comparing fractions, which is what we just went through, you need to do and apply the same method to adding, all right? So this is just a bit of like a recap for you. So it first says, when the denominators are different, we must make equivalent fractions to make our denominators the same. So again, we're using those same steps to success to find the answers. That is why it is so important that you are concentrating and focusing. So for starters, we have a look here and we go 4/4 plus 5/8. Now, first of all, are my denominators the same? No, they are not. Now, can I make the denominators with the largest number? Can 4 go into 8? Yes, it can. So therefore, I'm just going to make my equivalent fractions and I can then add the top numbers. If they're not, if I look at this fraction, these two fractions here, I can go say these two, I cannot say 4 goes into 5 equally. So now I would use that when I'm counting in those numbers. So I've used my multiple. So I'd say 5, 10, 15, 20, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. And I'd say, right, my lowest common multiple, that's what LCM stands for, is going to be 20 because both 4 can go into 20 and 5 can go into 20. And then I make my equivalent fractions and I add the top numbers. So let's have a look at what that means in practice. So this is what you should be doing with me now on your piece of paper so that you can make sure that you're getting these answers when you go into your teams. So step number 1, can you remember? Great stuff, guys. Step number 1, are my denominators the same? No, they are not. So I'm going to look now at the what number? I'm going to look at the biggest number. Well done. So look at my biggest number. My biggest number is 6. And I say, can 4 go into 6 equally? No, it cannot. So what do I need to do? Good. I need to now count in multiples of 4, 8, 12, 16, 6, 12, 18, and I'm going to stop there. And what numbers appear in both? 12 appears in both. This is the lowest common multiple. So my bottom number is now going to be 12. Can you remember now what my next step is? Great, I need to make equivalent fractions. So I have 3/4, and now I'm going to make my equivalent fractions. So I'm going to say, what did I do to the 4 to get 12? I times it by 3, and I stop and I pause. Is 4 times 3 12? Yes, it is. I'm happy. So I'm going to say 3 times 3 is 9. So whatever I do to the one number, I must do to the other number. And I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to say 6. What I do to 6 to get 12, I times it by 2. So whatever I do to the one number, I must do to the other. So 1 times 2 is 2. And I just go and check, is 6 times 2 12? Yes, I'm happy. And now I must just bring down my plus sign. And now I'm going to add the top numbers. Because my bottom numbers are the same, I can simply add the top numbers. And 9 plus 2 is 11. And then I leave the bottom number the same. That is your trick for today, is to not forget. And I'm going to be watching when I look at my feedback this evening. I'm going to be looking at the children who add those bottom numbers because then they have not paid attention. You must not add the bottom numbers. Right. See if you would like to give this one a go on your own. So pause the video now. I will leave the method at the top there for you. Pause the video now and have a go at following those steps and seeing if you can get that answer. Great, let's have a look. Hopefully you've done really well and you've managed to remember those steps. So the First step is good. Make the bottom numbers the same because they're not the same. What number must I look at first? The 10, good, because it's the biggest number. And I'm going to say, how many times can 5 go into 10? It can go in equally and it goes in twice. So I'm going to say 5 times 2 equals 10. So 3 times 2 is going to be 6. And what did I do to the 10 to get 10? I did absolutely nothing. I actually just multiplied it by 1 really. So 1 times 1 is 1. Bring down my plus sign. And now that my bottom numbers are the same, I can simply add my top numbers and my bottom number stays the same. Well done. Right, so here are your steps to success. So let's go through this one last time because this is where it is so important. I've also saved this in the Files tab to help you so you can have a look at it when you do your questions today. So the first step is to make the bottom numbers the same. And if they're not the same, then I need to change them. If they are the same, then I love that. If this was a 4 as well, then I would simply just add my top numbers, okay? But they're not the same, so I have to make them the same, all right? So I look at the biggest number first, and I say, can 4 go into 8 equally? And I can say, yes, it does. So I'm going to make my bottom numbers 8s, okay? That is step number 1. Step number 2. Make my equivalent fractions. So I'm going to have 2 quarters is equal to 4 eighths because I put my arrow there. 4 to the 8, I times it by 2. So whatever I do to the one number, I must do to the other number. And 2 times 2 is 4. And then I'm going to do it to the other number. 8 to 8, nothing. So nothing's going to happen to the 3. And I put my plus sign in between. Right. Now I add my top numbers. So once I've made my equivalent fractions, 4 plus 3 is 7. And then I leave the bottom number the same. And that is your 4 steps to success to get these answers today. Okay, so make sure you're following them because they're not difficult. It means you just have to practice it. Okay. Right, so on Teams, you can log on now and there are 10 questions for you to do. There's also a challenge. Should you finish early, you can have the challenge go. It's optional. You don't have to do it. I've also included a code breaker that you can work through over the next couple of days. If you can print it out, that would be great. But if not, you can do it on a piece of paper. And I've saved it in that Files tab as well for you. It's just fun. It's something extra as well. And you can do a little bit today, you can do a little bit tomorrow, you can do a little bit on Thursday if you want. It doesn't have to all be done today. It's also not compulsory, which means it's optional. You can do it if you would like. Have a wonderful day of maths. Enjoy it. Use those steps to success. Persevere, work hard, think about your questions, think about your answers. You've got this, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.